Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Julio Godinez, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar, Improve Pipeline Visibility with Datadog CI Visibility and CircleCI Webhooks, brought to you by CircleCI. We have a great webinar for you today, but before we get started, I need to go through some housekeeping announcements. Today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any part of the webinar, you will be able to watch it again. We will be sending out a link to access the webinar on demand, or you can visit devops.com/webinars, and it will be available for you as well. We are taking questions throughout the presentation. Use your webinar interface to submit questions into the Q&A section, and we will try to get to as many as possible at the end. We also have a polling question during today's event, so we'd appreciate it if you could take a couple of seconds to submit your answers when you see those come up on your screen. Finally, stick around until the end because we are doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so stay tuned to see if you're a winner. Joining me today is Zan Markin, Developer Advocate, CircleCI, and Brian Lee, Product Manager at Datadog. I'm now going to put myself on mute, turn off my camera, and let you get started.
All right. Hello, everyone. Great to be here. And thank you, Julio, for the introduction. So yeah, today we'll be talking about CI visibility. My name is Zan. I'm a developer advocate at CircleCI. So what we'll cover today is first we'll go through some basics about CI/CD in general, what the words really mean, and what the tech is all about, and CircleCI, the company. And then it's off to Brian to introduce us to Datadog and tell us a thing or two about the cool stuff that they're up to. And then we will cover the CircleCI Webhooks, so the feature that we just released, and how it kind of plays into Datadog's CI visibility. And we'll show you all of that in practice as well. Obviously, there's plenty of time for Q&A in the end, so don't hesitate to ask us anything. Anyway, let's proceed. So at CircleCI, we're all about helping developer teams go from idea to delivery as quickly and as easily as possible. And that's really kind of underlines everything that we do. So we're the world's leading CI/CD platform. We've been around for exactly 10 years. Yesterday, we released our 10th anniversary blog post. So it's really exciting time. Anyway, and yeah, we help teams all over the world of all sizes, of all industries, types of organizations, build better software. And yeah, we truly operate at an enormous scale and really on any programming language, any industry, you name it, we've probably got something building on CircleCI. But what does it actually do, right? So a CI/CD platform is really kind of underlying the whole software delivery lifecycle. If you imagine developers working on the source code, so obviously writing code, integrating with external libraries, external services, and then committing and pushing that source code to a remote repository. That's one part of the journey. So on the left hand, you have creation here. And on the other side, we've got some software that we want to run and operate in production, and obviously also monitor with tools like Datadog. But what happens in the middle is obviously the most interesting part, which is where we come in. And that's essentially doing all the building, testing, validating, and also deploying that software to where it actually needs to run. And that part is always tends to be the same for your software, no matter how many commits you do. You always want to compile something. You always want to integrate some libraries. You always want to run a set of tests, whether that's functional unit, integration tests, any types of tests, security scannings, all sorts of things. And yeah, you need to deploy it to the same environments. So that's why we help you automate all of that kind of orchestration middle part of the software development or delivery lifecycle. So how does this all really work? So there's two parts of CircleCI. One part is the dashboard where you kind of see all your projects kind of happening. So stuff that's you're kind of connecting to on a repository on one end, and then it gets built on CircleCI. That's kind of available and visible on dashboard to see all your kind of pipelines being built. And the other part is the actual configuration, which allows us to tell CircleCI what you want to do. This is done in a config file. We use YAML format for it, which is part of your repository. So if you got a repository with your application or a service, this config file is part of your repository, so it's tied to the same commit. Your code hasn't changed and your configuration hasn't changed because they are part of the same commit. So ideally, or it should all be 100% reproducible. So the top level idea or paradigm is a pipeline, which is what gets triggered in by CircleCI whenever you push some code. That's a pipeline, and that contains a number of workflows, one or many, which are essentially a graph or the way to orchestrate your work, or what we call jobs. You can specify things to run in order or sequentially or asynchronously, and whatever needs to happen, that's can get orchestrated in a workflow. And the core of everything, the kind of unit of work, is called a job, which is essentially a set of commands that executes in a specified runtime environment. And for anything that you can think of in here, so building code, building applications, doing deployments, running tests, running security scans, static code analysis, all sorts of things happen in jobs. And yes, for each job, we define an environment where we want to execute something. And that can be either a Docker image, again, specify the version, specify exactly which image we're talking about, or a virtual machine running on Linux, Mac OS, or Windows, so that, yes, everything is 100% reproducible. And then each job contains a series of steps or commands that get executed. They can be single, like, command line instructions, for example, npm run npm run command or npm install for doing Node.js, or they can be more complex instructions or command line programs that you want to run. These jobs then run and execute and then either terminate successfully or unsuccessfully, which then affects your workflow, whether it's kind of being successful or not. And that's how we orchestrate everything, how we kind of create everything. And I hope this gives you a nice idea of what a CI/CD process really is. And now I'll leave it to Brian to tell you a few things about Datadog as well.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Brian Lee, and I'm a product manager at Datadog working on our new CI Visibility product, which is currently in beta. This means you can log into Datadog today and try the product free during the beta period. And I'm excited to show you all how you can use Datadog and CircleCI together in order to gain a deeper understanding of your pipelines and tests. So for those who are unfamiliar with Datadog, we are the unified SaaS monitoring and security platform for dev, sec, ops, and business teams in the cloud age. We help companies understand the true state of their applications and systems infrastructure, make business decisions, troubleshoot customer issues, and improve the end user experience. The company was found similar to CircleCI around in 2010. And from the very beginning, the Datadog platform has consistently broken down silos between teams. So we strive to give you a holistic view of your environment so that your teams can troubleshoot and fix issues faster with no context switching. Our operating principle is simple but not simplistic. And we've been adding products at a pretty rapid clip in order to provide a single platform that can deliver visibility of your software throughout its entire lifecycle. Which brings me to the next slide. So this is where we introduce CI Visibility. So historically, Datadog has focused on monitoring live environments, but with CI Visibility, we're taking the same production grade observability tooling seen in prod and shifting it left to bring it closer to developers in CI. Now Zan will talk a bit about CircleCI Webhooks.
Cool. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, so CircleCI, we just announced and released webhooks actually beginning of this month, which is a new way to really use and get data out of CircleCI. If you think about how a CI/CD product works, so we've got the UI, we've got some APIs where you can access information about all the jobs and workflows and pipelines that you've been running. But sometimes API is not the best paradigm for this because we have to constantly request data from it and then kind of get it back, get it returned, regardless if there's been any movement or any new data or not. And that's where webhooks come in, because they allow you to access data about jobs and workflows that are being executed as soon as they terminate and in real time. So essentially, you give us your endpoint that you want us to hit, and we will usually hit your endpoint as soon as a job in a project or a workflow in a project has completed. So you get that data and you can then process it however you want, which then allows you to build tons of integrations for all sorts of use cases. One of them being the Datadog CI Visibility, and then also kind of gives you the ability to then make informed decisions based on your pipelines as soon as you get that data, as soon as that data is available. So that's kind of the webhooks in general. Difference with the APIs. APIs are more of a pull, whereas this is more of a push experience. And so there's tons of new possibilities. So with Datadog in particular, we allow you to then export or show that CircleCI data in your custom dashboards. So you can see your CI metrics within Datadog and integrate that really nicely, and then have it for all sorts of monitoring use cases for you can see what's happening wherever you're actually looking at that data, and which is pretty cool. There is also a testing capability, which is really handy as well for debugging flaky tests that might occur. So that's kind of what we'll be showing you. And now let's, I think, Brian, you have a couple more words about what we'll be talking about.
Yeah. So what can you do with CI Visibility? Our CI Visibility product has capabilities that can be broadly categorized into two different buckets. There's pipeline, and then there's testing visibility. So these two are independent with their own steps for setup and configuration. However, they do work better together. So when we talk about testing today, that encapsulates tests written in code by developers. So generally your unit, integration, and benchmark tests. And these typically happen within your pipeline executions. So as Zan pointed out, our integration together is required to power our pipeline visibility functionality. So here we can provide you with a single pane of glass for CI across your entire organization. We can help identify high-value leverage points within your system to improve performance and reliability. And all of this data is available for you to create custom dashboards to slice and dice as you see fit. And when it comes to testing visibility, we enable you to manage your flaky tests, providing APM-like end-to-end visibility of every test, allow you to track the historical performance of your tests, and it's been created with the developer in mind, focusing around the constructs developers work with daily. So these are repos, branches, and commits. So we actually have a poll, if you want to launch that, Julio. we would like to get an idea of how people on the call manage their flaky tests. So you can select as many as you want, and this is kind of it's a bit of a continuum of how mature your organization is when it comes to identifying these flaky tests. So from talking to various engineering organizations across dozens of companies, it's usually the spectrum as to how mature your processes are for detecting, triaging, managing, and remediating flaky tests, whether these are manual and whether they're automated. And with CI Visibility, we aim to give you a robust process to manage your flaky tests out of the box. We know flaky tests can be extremely frustrating for the developer experience, and if left unchecked, could be quite harmful to the engineering culture and cause developers to slowly but surely lose confidence in their testing and make them more likely to just hit retry when any of their builds fail. All right, so can we see the poll results, if that's been enough time? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, unfortunately, we can't really visualize the poll results. I can verbalize them, however, and it looks like we're still getting a couple of responses here. Okay, and okay, so when it comes to the poll, we had the majority was we manually track flaky tests. Second was we have a manual process in place to address flaky tests. And then we had one at flaky tests are left to tribal knowledge. Two at we automatically identify and track flaky tests. No one selected the we're able to triage our flaky tests based on how flaky they are. We also had two at we can identify the commit that introduced or made a test flaky. One at we have an automatic process in place to address flaky tests. And finally, two, we quarantine flaky tests to prevent them from affecting the build status.
All right, interesting. Yes, it's always good to hear where people are at today with managing flaky tests. I know at Datadog, not too long ago, it's quite often a build would fail, a test would fail, and people would go into Slack, with there's more tribal knowledge. We're like, this test failed. Does anyone know if it's a flaky test or not? And if someone responded within the next 5 minutes, maybe that would be caught. But it was very ad hoc, and until we actually created our own custom in-house tooling, and then something that eventually turns into the CI Visibility product, it really helped save a lot of time and energy from our developers doing things in a non-optimal way. So it's always good to continuously level up your processes for managing flaky tests, working your way to automating as much of it as possible, or using a tool like Datadog to provide a standardized workflow that every product development team can adopt and get started with right away. So now I'll be doing a product walkthrough. So I'll give you a demo to give you an idea of what's possible when you use both CircleCI and Datadog together. And later in the demo, I'll show you exactly how we can help you manage your flaky tests. All right, so I'm going to screen share. So when it comes up to setting up the integration, it's pretty quick and simple. Once you've logged into Datadog, you'll see the CI product on the left-hand navigation. And we have some information about the product for you. And once you're ready to get started, you can click on instrumenting a new pipeline. From here, we'll select CircleCI, and you can see the instructions here. So next, we'll head into our CircleCI account.
Cool. Yeah, so this is the CircleCI dashboard that I alluded to earlier. So I think you've got a project already configured. We're looking at the projects list where you can add new things to start building on CircleCI. I believe you need to go into the repo, click on the repo, yeah. Do you mind zooming in a little bit more, Brian? Yeah, I think that's better. And yeah, this is all the builds that are happening in that particular project. And to configure webhooks, we need to go to this project settings button on the top right hand side. And the webhooks is an option on the left hand menu, which is we kind of create a new webhook. So by pressing the add webhook button, you can obviously give it a name, and the key thing here is the receiver URL, which is what we got from Datadog, I believe.
Yep, so I can come in here and just do this really quick. So I can copy this webhook name we suggest, and then we provide the receiver URL here, and you would just replace this API key placeholder with your actual API key. And then here we would just check the certificate verifications check, as well as the two check boxes here for types of events. And then to save this, we'll click Add Webhook.
And this is all you need to do, really, because any new commits, any new builds that you really trigger are going to be kind of hitting that. We're going to be hitting that webhook, and that's going to go to Datadog. So that's all the magic.
Yep, so pretty straightforward. So from now on, as I mentioned, every workflow and pipeline you kick off for this project will show up in Datadog. So we can go to the pipelines part of the product. And here we can see all of our pipelines from our CircleCI projects with information about the default branch, including the builds per hour, the failure rate, average build duration, P95 duration. It's the 95th percentile, so your slowest durations here, and the latest result for the pipeline. You can sort using the various columns, so you can pull your most active pipelines to the top, or maybe you can find your most often failing pipelines, or quickly find your slowest pipelines. And so once we click into a pipeline, we'll be brought to the overview page. Let's see, maybe there's a pipeline with more data. So here at the top, you can change the branch you're inspecting, as well as the time frame. And you can quickly access the latest execution at the top by just clicking on this row. This will show you your most recent execution, and we'll dive into this a bit more in just a second. Here we'll show you all the different various execution statuses over time. We can let you focus in on the failures. You can view the P50 and P95 duration over time. And here we have a summary breakout section of your jobs. So here we show aggregated information over the given time frame. So you can see things like each of your jobs, P50 and P95 durations, how much time is spent towards each job in execution, as well as the overall failure rates for each. So product development teams at Datadog will typically come into this job summary table, sort by the failure rate, Then they have a quick rundown of all of the most problematic jobs that are causing their pipeline to fail most often. Below this table, we have additional visualization for your pipeline data. This can help you identify outliers and patterns in your executions. This is a demo environment with not much data, but this would slowly get built out. And here at the bottom, you have access to all the underlying raw data of the individual pipeline executions. So once you click on a pipeline execution, it brings you to the detail view. So here we represent your pipeline execution as a trace. So the root span is the pipeline, and then you can see each job is represented as a span underneath. So the flame graph view makes it easy to identify any major bottlenecks or places for optimization. Generally, the longer span and the higher the span is, the more it represents, or sorry, the lower the span is, it means it's a dependency for the above. And it's a good place to optimize. And since we're using both the pipeline and testing functionality, I can see here in the top under test runs, how many tests are failing for this pipeline execution. And I can quickly access all of the tests that ran as part of this specific pipeline execution. So I can quickly filter for all the failed tests. I can click on one of these tests here to pull up the exact details of that test execution. If I want to understand what the failure was and more information about this test, that's available for me. And then also when it comes to figuring out which team is responsible, it's also useful to look at the test service name here. In the tag section of the pipeline, I have access to the CircleCI metadata, as well as the Git metadata associated with this pipeline. So for example, I can see the pipeline ID, name and URL, as well as the branch, Git author, and commit message. Additionally, I can click on the pipeline ID at the top, and I can jump directly to this pipeline inside of CircleCI. Clicking or hovering on any of these jobs would pull up the metadata associated to that specific job. And now, navigating to pipeline executions gives us access to every execution across all pipelines. So here we can filter our data using filter facets, whether it's filtering by pipeline metadata, like status, duration, name, whether it's been manually triggered or if it's a partial retry. We can also filter by Git metadata, including by repository, branch, commit, tags, and some other ones. We can also view this data at the level of pipeline, or we can choose to look at it by the level of job. So now we can have a job first view across all of our job executions for the given time frame. And we also have this analytics tab. So here, we can create visualizations from our data. For example, if I want to know which pipelines are contributing most to my errors, I can filter by status, error. I can then aggregate by pipeline name and make this view into a top list. And here I can have all of my top failing pipelines. Similarly, if I wanted to look at this at the job level, I could change that and then change to the aggregation by job name. Now I can see my top failing jobs across my entire CI system. And if I want to for example, see the P99 duration of all of my jobs and find out which jobs are having the slowest durations, I can remove this status filter, change this to show duration. And instead of average duration, I can go down here to P99. And if I want to extend this list down to the top 25, I can do that as well. So now I have a breakdown of all of the slowest jobs ordered by percentile. And if you want to save your investigation, you can always export it by clicking here, and you can save it to a dashboard or a notebook. This makes collaborating on incidents or sharing something with a deep link to a colleague quite easy. So all of the data from your CircleCI pipelines and jobs will be accessible through our custom dashboards. And to help you get started, we've actually created a preset dashboard accessible through the product's top nav. So if you click on dashboards up here and then CircleCI CI pipelines, it'll take you to this preset dashboard. So you can change the time frame at the top, and you have some filter facets to work with at the top as well. So we actually created this exact dashboard for our own build engineering team here at Datadog. And after showing it to a few early customers, it was something that they really wanted. So we actually saved it as a preset dashboard, and now it's available for all customers. So it serves as a great showcase as to the kinds of data we're receiving from CircleCI, and it can help get your creative muscles flowing in case you want to visualize how you want to visualize your own data. So we have various filter facets at the top, making it easy to filter by CI provider, by pipeline name, branch name, by instance, if you happen to be running multiple instances, as well as environment. For example, if I want to just filter this down by all of my main branches or staging branches, I can do that quite easily. So at Datadog, that's one of our primary use cases. We have this dashboard broken down by default, staging, and feature branches, so we can see what our different status metrics are for each of those types of branch. So in this dashboard, we'll show you things like your executions over time by pipeline, your overall success rate, your P50 and P95 durations over time, some duration distributions, a table of your slowest pipelines, your failure rates over time, how much time you've actually lost due to these failed pipelines, and your top failing pipelines along with their median and P95 durations. And we have all of this data broken down by stage, if your CI provider supports stages, and by job. And this entire dashboard is being powered by the underlying individual pipeline executions, which means you can click on anything here as part of your investigation and drill down to the exact executions that caught your interest. So for example, if I go to the pipeline duration distribution chart, and if I want to see my P90 pipelines here, or my outliers, I can click on this bucket and I can go to view related pipelines. And that'll take me to the exact executions that made up that bucket of the widget. So I can then see these outliers and investigate a bit more as to why these pipeline executions were much slower than the median. So what we've typically seen from customers is that their build or platform engineering or SRE team will use this dashboard as their single pane of glass into the entire CI system. They'll usually clone and filter this dashboard down to provide custom views for each of their product development teams. And this ensures these development teams have a tailored dashboard to get quick feedback into their exact CI resource consumption, as well as help them identify any regressions or areas for optimization. So that was a quick overview of the pipeline visibility part of the product. So next, I want to briefly cover how Datadog can bring deeper visibility into your tests. So I'll go here into the tests part of the product. Or actually before that, I will go to how you would get set up with this. So from our getting started page, you can click on setting up a new test service. So here, we support various languages and test frameworks. And you would just follow the instructions below. So for example, if we select Java, we'll then be asked which test framework we're using, as well as which build automation tool, and whether our CI provider is in the cloud or on premises. So for CircleCI, we'll choose cloud, and we can actually select then CircleCI. And then we'll see instructions for how to use the Datadog CircleCI orb to ensure our test results are properly sent from CircleCI to Datadog. And if we don't support your specific programming language or test framework, we also have a fallback. So you can select JUnit XML test reports, and you can always upload these to Datadog to power the majority of the product. The only thing you'll miss out on is the distributed trace of each test. So next, we'll look at some test data. So since this product is so new, we don't yet have a ton of test data in our demo environment. So I will be referencing a couple of screenshots throughout this demo. But once you have some tests runs in, we'll show you all of your test services, which typically map to a repository, unless maybe you have a monorepo, and then you might have many test services for a single repository. So we'll show information here about your default branches, including the number of flaky tests detected, along with the P50 and P95 dwell time. We define flaky tests as a test that both passes and fails for the same commit. So whether you're doing these retries through the test framework, or maybe your developers are retrying a build after it fails, that's what we use as signal to determine if a test is flaky or not. And dwell time is the real world elapsed time developers would wait for tests to finish. So this means if you were to parallelize your tests, this number would go down. And at the far end here, we'll show you the status of the latest commit to the default branch, and we'll show you some information about the Git author and the commit information that is this latest commit. Clicking on the branches view allows me to see every branch across every repository, which is useful for developers to see the test status of their latest commit to their future branches. You can see how many tests passed, how many failed, and how many were skipped. And we'll also show you if the feature branch is introducing any new flaky tests that had not yet been seen in the default branch. So at Datadog, using this feature, we view any feature branch introducing new flaky tests as a blocker to merging to our default branch. And this allows us to maintain and raise the bar on the quality of our tests over time. We also get to see the dwell time of our feature branch and how it compares to the default branch average. So again, this gives our developers ahead of time a warning if they're about to introduce a performance regression into the default branch before they merge. And since we know this product will be used heavily by individual contributors, by developers, we have this My Branches toggle that lets you quickly filter this list down to only the branches you've committed to against. And this is configurable, so I can come in here and I can change my email address, and this will match against the Git author email we see coming in for these various commits. So once I click into a specific test service, we're given a high-level overview, much like the pipeline side of the product. We can change the branch we're inspecting, as well as the time frame at the top. We have the most recent commit with any of the failing tests and the error type if it were failing. We have a table of the past commits and their various test statuses if you're interested in the branch's historical data. We also have a section of all of your flaky tests that we've identified for you, along with information to help you triage these tests and the ability to manage them. So for example, we'll show you information like the average duration, the time and commit in which this test first flaked. So you can be reasonably sure that this commit was either the one that introduced this flaky test or involved the code change that made this test flaky. We'll then show you when this test last flaked, as well as the failure rate, which gives you an idea of how flaky this test is, because not all flaky tests are equal. For example, a test that flakes 50% of the time is much worse than a test that only flakes 5% of the time. And at the back end here we have a failure trend graph that gives you an idea of if the test has been failing recently and it's still a problem, or maybe it's been resolved and it hasn't been failing at all in the past week. And we give you two different ways to remediate your flaky tests. You can come in and manually remove a flaky test from this table if you know you fixed the flaky test. And alternatively, if the test hasn't flaked in the past 30 days, we'll automatically remove it from this table for you. We also have a test summary section, which shows you all of your slowest tests and most common errors. So in the table of slowest tests, it presents potential candidates for optimization. And for most common errors, every time a test fails, it would look something like this. Every time a test fails in the given time frame, we capture the error type. So if there's a common underlying root cause leading to many of your tests to fail over time, it will be surfaced here. So product development teams at Datadog have seen great results by regularly tackling our top 3 to 5 flaky tests and slowest tests each week, leading to steadily increasing our reliability and improving testing times. So with these testing improvements, we've actually seen a significant impact to our pipeline performance, as our testing stage tends to be both the flakiest and longest running stage in our pipelines. And here at the bottom, we have access to all the underlying raw data, where we can see each of the individual test runs. So clicking on a test run will bring us to the detail view. So here's where we can see the distributed trace of the test. So this is a unit test, so it's fairly simplistic. But if we were to go to a more an integration or an end-to-end test, we can see the full end-to-end distributed trace here. And we do this by auto-instrumenting the specific languages and test frameworks I showed earlier. And we auto-instrument some common libraries like HTTP, SQL, and gRPC. So if you've already taken the time to instrument your applications or services with APM, we piggyback on that existing instrumentation, and we give you the full end-to-end visit trace of exactly what the test was doing throughout the entire request. This makes solving complex test failures, such as the dependency service throwing an error 500, easy to catch, and your developers no longer need to waste time trying to reproduce test failures locally after the fact. And here we can see, since we collect the Git metadata associated to a test run, we can see also which CircleCI pipeline it ran as a part of. And we can go to that pipeline if we want. And we also know that this test was actually retried multiple times against this given commit. So it both passed and failed. So this test here would actually be marked as flaky. We have access also to some of the metadata of the test, including the pipeline metadata and the Git metadata. And if we click into the performance tab here, we can see the historical performance of the test. And we actually see if this is a development branch, we can actually see the default branch overlaid. So we can actually do a comparison to see if our feature branch is potentially introducing an outlier or regression as compared to the default branch. So to give you a little bit better visualization of what this might look like, we have this test here. So we can actually see, quickly identify if a test is getting faster or slower over time. So in this example, if we click on the test run in which the performance improves, we pull in the Git metadata associated to the commit this test run was a part of. And here we can see the Git metadata associated to it and allow us to pinpoint the exact commit in which a performance improvement or regression has been introduced. So we noticed at Datadog that once we started providing our developers with these kinds of tools and dashboards, it really helped incentivize them to make these kinds of proactive fixes and improvements. So now developers can see the impact of their changes, whether it holds over time or not. And they have this dashboard to share with their manager and other stakeholders. So I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough of CI visibility. This represents Datadog's first step towards shifting our observability left earlier in the software development lifecycle, and excited to see how this can help you in your organizations. As a reminder, the product is free while it's in beta, so I hope you'll try it out. And now we'll open it up to any questions you may have, whether it's for CircleCI or Datadog.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much for that presentation. We do have a couple of questions, but before we get to those, I do want to remind everybody that you can submit a question by going over to the Q&A section next to chat. One question we have here is, can Datadog synthetic tests results/metrics be sent via CircleCI Webhooks into the Datadog CI Visibility, i.e., could DD CI Visibility show DD synthetics metrics this way?
Sorry, is the question?
Oh, yeah.
Is that the one by Iceland Jennings?
Oh, yes.
So in general, anything you can send from CircleCI, obviously we showcased in Datadog, but if you've got any Datadog specific insights, Brian.
Yep. So we do plan on integrating CI Visibility product with the other Datadog products, especially once we GA more holistically. So for example, one way in which we're doing it is the APM product has a deployment tracking feature in which users can give a user-defined name to a given release. And fairly soon, they'll enrich that with the repository and commit hash. And as you saw through our demo, we always collect the repo, branch, and commit hash for your pipelines and tests. So pretty soon, you'll be able to basically pivot with that commit hash between your pipeline, test, and live data in APM. And the same goes with synthetics. So synthetics, we know which commits were tested for your synthetics test, especially if they were triggered in CI, like in CircleCI. And so we plan on bringing the test results in for a given pipeline execution for as I showed, not only your automated tests, but also having a section dedicated to your Datadog synthetics tests. So then you can kind of quickly jump through from your pipeline to the synthetic test executions and vice versa. You'll be able to go to from your synthetics tests to the pipeline executions that ran those synthetics tests.
Okay, excellent. The next question we have is there a way to do this at the organizational level or programmatically across all repos?
I think this is related to how to set webhooks, right? At the moment, it's per repository, so per project. But yeah, like I'm counting those requests and then relaying them to the product team, and yeah.
Yep. So that is something on the roadmap with the integration with CircleCI to have an organization-wide integration, so you can immediately connect all of your projects in one go.
Next question we had here was, can we set up a webhook for the entire organization to not have them set up every projects to track them?
I think this was very similar to the previous question. Yeah, at the moment, it's per project, and there's no way to set it for the entire organization. But yeah, I'm counting those and relaying them to the product team.
Next, we have, it looks fantastic. Does it surface any data about time, jobs spend queuing?
Yep. So that's another part of the webhook that is on the roadmap with CircleCI. So it didn't make this initial release, but queue time will be added to the webhook and be sent over. So I didn't quite show it because we didn't have it yet, but you'll be able to see, you'll be able to filter all of your job executions by queue time, and you will have queue time distributions. You can do queue time percentiles and manipulate your data however you want.
Excellent. Okay, so next question we have is, CircleCI recently started using flaky to test failures in its UI. Does it determine flakiness in the same way as Datadog?
Okay, so yeah, we also have a feature called Insights, where we surface some of the similar information. Yeah, one of them is actually Test Insights. Whether it's exactly the same as with Datadog, I am not sure. But what I can do is drop my email address in the chat, and if you just reach out to me, I can find that out for you offline, if that sounds good. Let me just drop my email. It's zan@circleci.com. Yeah, I've just dropped it in the chat, so should be able to see it, I hope.
Okay, and I stick it at the top of the chat just so everybody can see it there.
Thank you, Julio.
Of course. And the next question was, we've heard from Datadog support that a feature to allow alerting on source equals CI tests is currently not available, but in the works. Do you happen to have an update on the ETA for this functionality?
Yes. So we'll be adding the monitoring and alerting capabilities that you typically have with all of the other Datadog products. We're working on it in Q4, so starting tomorrow. So we'll be working on first pipeline monitors and alerts, followed up by testing monitors and alerts. So we hope to have both of those completed by the end of the quarter. And with that, you'll basically have the query editor at your disposal. So you'll be able to trigger monitors on, for example, test failures or pipeline or job failures if it exceeds a certain threshold, or potentially on queue time thresholds or duration thresholds. So, alert my team in the Slack channel if the job duration exceeds a certain duration, or alert my team if this given test service or given individual test exceeds a certain duration.
Nice, very nice. So next we have, will we be able to easily measure lead time from first commit to CI, GitHub PR, time it took for the commit version to be deployed to production?
So right now, you wouldn't be able to do it unless you kind of pieced together the raw data yourself. But we do actually plan to tackle DORA metrics in general. So we know a lot of organizations are interested in tracking the DORA metrics. So change failure rate, mean time to resolution, deployment frequency, and lead time from commit to production. So we plan to provide that, as well as something we're looking at, we're calling internally dev DORA metrics. So being able to look at something, for example, a pipeline default branch. This is something we actually really want internally at Datadog. So having a product development team take their pipeline default branch and being able to know, what's the mean time between failures on that default branch. So how often is our team breaking our default branch or staging branch? And then mean time to resolution of that default branch. So when we do break our default branch, how long does it then take us to fix it? And then we'll be able to kind of have an uptime, downtime on our shared branches in development. So we're kicking off the discovery work of DORA metrics this quarter. And I would hope, I don't want to make any promises, but hopefully we can have something available to give you DORA metrics out of the box sometime early next year.
Very nice. Something to look forward to. So next, we're almost at the top of the hour, but I think we have enough time. Last two, can you instrument CircleCI job step performances to figure out the slowest step in a job?
Yes. So actually, we support creating custom spans in CircleCI. And so what you can do is we have a Datadog CI CLI tool, and we haven't. I don't think we've released the documentation for it, so it's currently being tested, and it's in our staging environment. But what you'll be able to do is essentially wrap your various commands or steps, and you could have those appear nested underneath the job they're coming from.
Okay, and last question, how do we better understand the roadmap and for when new features are going to be made available so we can plan ahead?
Yep, we don't have a public roadmap posted, but I do know if you go through your CSM at Datadog and you ask about the roadmap, you'll probably get a meeting scheduled with me, and I'll be happy to walk you through a bit of the roadmap we have coming up in the future.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, and just as a reminder that today's webinar has been recorded, so if you missed any or all of the webinar, you will be able to watch it again. We will be sending an email with a link to access the webinar on demand. The webinar will also be available on devops.com. Just look in the on-demand section in the webinars page, and it will be there. Now to our 4 Amazon gift card winners. Our winners today are Gianpaolo M. Congratulations. Diego G. Congratulations, Diego. Timothy Q. And Akshay B. So congratulations to all our winners. We will be reaching out to you via email with instructions for claiming your Amazon gift card, so please check your inbox. And if you don't see anything there, please check your spam folder. I'd like to say thank you again to Zan and Brian for an excellent webinar. And thanks again for the audience for joining and all your great questions. This is Julio Godinez signing off until next time. Be well.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.